right, now I'm ready. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Trilogy Talk. I am Scott, and I will be your host for this episode. So, it's been a couple weeks. I really have to say, since I created the Trilogy Talk, the podcasting portion of it, I started this in the winter time. I never realized how hard it would be to fit it into the schedule, but I love doing it. And I think about it every week and all the time, and as I'm doing things, even out on the course, I see things on Facebook or different social media outlets, and I see things that I want to talk about, and I'm sorry for not getting these out a little bit quicker. I am going to keep working on it. I do actually have on Monday an interview with Kevin Gleason, Team Latitude 64 member. It will be the first interview that I've done for Trilogy Talk, at least to put through the podcast. So I'm excited for that, and I'm kind of hoping once I get through the trials and tribulations of that process to be able to start doing that a little bit more often. But just to kind of get onto a little bit more routine. I know it's kind of hard for you to follow me if you don't know when I'm going to post, but I'm here now. So what's been going on? Well, a lot of things have been happening in the disc golf world. We just had the World Championships. A lot of excitement there. The week before that, or I think it's 2 weeks before that, we had the Mid-America Open here locally, which we'll talk about that a little bit too, just because it has to do with Emerson Keith. For me, I ran the Midwest Amateur Championships, which was a 144-person A-tier here in Kansas City. It's actually in its 7th year. It's the largest tournament that I ran, and I ran it for the first 5 years. I've talked about this in a few past episodes, but last year I didn't run it because I ran the Masters World Championships, and I handed it off to Matt Lloyd over in Arkansas, and he ran it for 2018, and then just schedules got a little too chaotic, and he asked me to take it back, and I did. And it was kind of a last minute thing, but we got it taken care of, and I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm in full steam for 2020. I was just in Emporia today, already looking at a few things down the production line of what can we do to improve, working my fundraising and stuff like that start and take place. So again, I am excited. I'm excited to get that started. And plus I have my normal tournaments and a few things like that. So that's kind of the big thing for disc golf wise. So on a more personal note, I became a grandfather last week on August 16th to a little baby boy. My oldest daughter, Leah, who lives down in Phoenix, she had her first child. So I'm pretty excited for that. Probably more curious. I haven't seen the baby physically yet. I've only seen the pictures. Pretty excited though. Leon Alexander is the name, and yeah, we'll see. I'm 44 years old. I don't know that I ever thought that I would be a grandfather at 44 years old. So I'm not really, again, it's probably that is more the concern. That's more the hesitation that I have. It has nothing to do with the baby itself. Has nothing to do really with my daughter having the child. It has more to do with, am I ready to be a grandfather at 44? I remember my grandparents, and no offense to those grandparents that are out there. I'm sure a lot of people kind of think the same thing, but I always had thought of grandparents are old. I remember my grandparents, and they're still in my mind what I would consider older now. I mean, gray hair and retired, and at least that's what I remember. Of course, I don't remember them at the baby stage, so by the time I was probably to an age I could remember, I'm probably 10 years old. So I suppose in 10 years when I'm 54, maybe I'll look closer to like what I envision what a grandparent should look like. But yeah, either way, I'm a grandparent. So, all right, well, let's move on a little bit here. So one of the things that I noticed this week, I saw some discussions online, and people were talking about pay-to-play courses versus public courses. And I don't have a lot to say on it, but it's something I did want to kind of bring up, and I definitely want your opinion on it. So if you have an opinion on private courses or public courses, which ones you think are better, the pros or the cons, feel free to put it down in the comments. Let's talk about it a little bit. Let's kind of evaluate as a community what we feel about those things. So public versus private, I'm good with both. I personally like private courses though a lot. I love the pay-to-play concept. I wish more tournaments were on a pay-to-play concept. And the biggest reason is I feel, and this isn't in every case, but I feel when it's a pay-to-play concept or private course, there's more care and more love that goes into the course. You see less bottle breaking, less graffiti, less missing chain links, less overgrown grass, less rough in the rough. It seems to be typically more taken care of in a lot of cases. I feel like there's a lot of love put in those courses. I also think when you go to Disc Golf Course Review and you look at the top 10 courses, you'll see the predominant portion of those are pay-to-play courses. And I think there's a reason for that. I think that model shows that those courses typically have a little bit more care. And it's not necessarily because of the money that comes into it. And I'm sure the money makes a big difference of what those courses can afford. But I feel like when an entity is out there to, if they're in a position that they want to start charging for you to go play, I think then that also means that they care more about what you're doing. It's not so much to bring more, I mean, sure, I'm sure there's a business aspect to it, to bringing more money in, but it's more of they like certain aesthetics to the course, whether it's big boulders or better baskets, better tee signs, bridges, maybe a pro shop on site. There's different aspects to what make a pay-to-play good or great, but obviously having that revenue helps. Where a public course, you have to deal with parks and budgets. You may get a park department who cares about your disc golf course. You may get someone who doesn't. It's really hard to sell somebody when they got to spend somebody else's money versus your own money. A lot of public parks, though, I think are probably simpler, are more beginner friendly for the most part. They're usually probably easier to access. They're easier to get in and out of as far as getting in to play a quicker round. So those are some positives. But it's also the public courses typically, unless you have a really good parks department that will stay on it and stay managing those courses well, you're more likely to see, like I said, the broken bottles, the graffiti, the trash out into the rough, poison ivy, thorns, things like that. So it was just a topic that I saw online that made me think a little bit, and I think I've talked about it before, and I've had the conversation with multiple other people as far as which one you like. And I think a lot of players' dream is to build their own course, but I think build their own public course, just to design a course. But I think almost every disc golfer's dream is to own their own private course, whether it's for themselves or for their friends and family or to make a legitimate business out of it. I think the private course is the way to go. Obviously, it's not nearly as easy. It's probably a lot easier to get a public course. It's a lot easier to find some land and propose it to the city than it is to spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars to not only purchase the land, but then all this money that goes into land manipulation, the baskets, the tee pads, whether they're natural tee pads, turf pads, concrete pads, removal of trees, not just removing them, physically cutting them down, but getting machinery to get them out. Even if that's as simple as just a truck that you're loading in all the branches and debris into, there's still a lot of cost in that. If you're trying to make moguls or hills and you need to shift the earth a little bit around to make whatever design you're trying to do, it's definitely a lot more expensive. And of course expensive, I suppose, to a private course. But I think ultimately, most private courses are probably better. So if you've been hiding underneath a rock, you probably do not know that the World Championships in Peoria, Illinois happened last week. The Professional World Championships for both your men's division and your women's division. Is a very exciting week. A lot of people never saw some of the situations coming, but Emerson Keith, we're going to talk about him right off the bat. Emerson held the top for the majority of the tournament, or at least was right there in the first, second spot, and really was right there until that third round. So Emerson did a good job. I'm going to congratulate Emerson right off the bat to get going, but I want to look at a little bit of what he's been doing. If you haven't really paid attention, I talked about Emerson a little bit at the very beginning podcast when I first started the show, even the beginning of the year. I was watching him pretty regularly because it seemed like he was consistently right there in the top. And I'm on his profile for the PDGA, and as I'm looking, his first several events, they're pretty much all first and seconds. He has one Flex Start C tier that happened there in Dallas. or in Texas that he didn't cash at. He got 12th place. I'm not sure out of how many, but it's actually the only time he hasn't cashed in the entire year. If you look at everything he's done throughout the year, he's got a lot of big paydays, a lot of little paydays. He plays a lot of tournaments. He has already played 35 tournaments in 2019, and we are just in mid-August. Still a good solid couple months to go. Now I know Emerson is having a baby with his wife any moment. I haven't heard whether they've had it yet or not, but I haven't heard that they have. So I'm going to go with it has not happened yet. And so I'm sure his season's going to slow down. But even if he stopped today at 35 points, making just under $23,000 for pretty much a half a, well, I guess we're 8 months in because he started in January. I would say it's a pretty good year. I think if he stopped today, I think it's a pretty good year. Emerson showed up to Worlds. I don't think a lot of people probably even knew who Emerson was, especially from the fan base, from the masses. Maybe they've heard his name here and there with some wins, but I don't think he really had the fan base. And I know as I listened to a few of his interviews, he kind of talked about wanting to come out and almost make a statement. And I think he did. I think if people did not know who he was prior to this week or this past week, I think the majority of the world do now. And I think his fan base is exponentially exploded. It's a pretty big word, exponentially. So, exponentially exploded. And it's pretty exciting. We'll look at his worlds here in a second. But I wanted to go back to 2 weeks ago for the Mid-America Open. So, Emerson won the Mid-America Open, and he won it pretty handily. He won it by 7 strokes over Zachariah Johnson and Joel Freeman. And so this course was at Harmony Bends, playing the Golds to the Golds. It is on Disc Golf Course Review considered the #1 ranked course in the world. Now, it is a good course. It's a very good course. I love playing it. Is it #1 ranked in the world? I think that could be argued, but I think it's up there. It's still a 5-star course out of 5 stars. It's may not, in my mind, be the best course, but I definitely think it is a great course. And he went out there and tore this course up. So out of, I don't know how many people were there, out of 81 open players, he was one of, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 players to shoot under par. So 81 players, 70 shot even or worse. And he shot 21 under. So compared to the masses, he shredded that course. And he beat a lot of good players. Zachariah Johnson, Joel Freeman, Alex Russell, Cameron Messerschmidt, Nicola Castro, Andrew Presnell, Jake Lauber, Ron Converse, AJ Risley. There's some good names in there. And not only shredded that course, but he shredded that competition. He shredded those players. And it's a pretty technical course, a wooded course, probably closer to like the Northwoods course that was played in Peoria. At least that style of course versus an open course. And it's just so impressive to watch what he's doing. His putting, is on. The way he shapes and carves lines, I think is super impressive. So to see what he's been doing throughout the year and going through all his stats, like I said, he's cashed at every event, winning the Mid-America Open. He won just over $1,000, just under $1,100. Then the World Championships comes out, takes third, winning $4,500 from that. If you really look and break down his round, like I said, he was in the lead for a lot of it. So Emerson is a 1023 rated player. And I know now at Worlds, all the best players in the world are there. So the ratings are going to be a little bit skewed based on how a person competes. But still, if you look at it, the only round he did not shoot above his rating was his final round, which he definitely struggled. He was a few over, worked his way back down to, I don't remember if it was even or 1 or 2 under, but still shot a 1021 rated. So based on, you take rating for what it's worth, but for the most part, shot his rating that last round, maintained the top 3 spots to tie with James Conrad. They lost by 9 strokes overall, so he gave up a lot of strokes. But if you look at all those ratings, 1093, 1080, 1044, 1053. The next closest on his rating was 1044. So shooting an average of 21 rating points over his rating, so which is theoretically about 2 strokes better on that round. So outside of having that blow-up round, his next worst round was still 2 strokes better than his worst against a monster field, the best in the world. I'm really excited to see what happens with Emerson and what he continues to do. I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, just congratulations, Emerson. I'm definitely a fan. I think you've gotten a lot of fans. I have been a fan for a while, and I'm a bigger fan. I'm just super excited. So, but on other parts of the world. So if you don't know, Paul McBeth won. Paul McBeth he won by 1 stroke. But really, one of the other cool stories that came out of Worlds was Ricky Wysocki. Ricky Wysocki struggled a little bit on those beginning rounds, but went 24 for 36 birdies on the last 2 rounds to lose by 1. Shot 2 course records, or minimally tied the course records, to work his way up. At one point, he was 13 strokes back and came back. And he had an injured finger. I saw some pictures of it floating around where he got stuck with a thorn. It did not look comfortable. And it just kind of makes you think, what would Ricky have done if he hadn't shot his, going back through, and really his worst round was round 2, which was a 61, still a 1036 rated round, so 11 rating points under his round. But Paul shot a 53, James Conrad shot a 59, Emerson shot a 54. So I mean, even if you kind of meet that in the middle to what Paul and Ricky shot, I mean, you're talking 7, 8 strokes, so 4 strokes difference there. And plus being hurt. Now, I don't think his finger hurt nearly as much in those last 2 rounds. And when you're shooting 14 down, I mean, I really don't think you can shoot that much better, hurt finger or not. But I definitely think he probably could have shot better. And one of the things I would have been really curious to see would have been if Ricky had been healthy in those first 3 rounds, or shot what we expect of Ricky in those first 3 rounds. I'd been curious to see what would it have done to Paul. Would Paul have still played the same game? Probably not. I mean, Paul's a fierce competitor. Paul doesn't like to lose. He's going to push pretty hard. I think, and even he's kind of said he was probably a little lax on that final round. Wishes he would have pushed a little bit harder, but he did what he had to do to win, to get that 5-time world championship, or that 5-time next to his signature, or the 5-time that he's going to be able to put on all these new Discraft discs. So that would have been pretty exciting to see. But regardless, Ricky probably had one of the near comebacks ever. I mean, there may have been other ones out there, but I don't know of them. But to come back, being 13 strokes behind, again, shooting 2 course records, 24 for 36 birdies over Eureka. I just think that was super impressive. So, but Paul is your 5-time world champion, winning $10,000. I'm just curious here real quick. Matching what Greg Barsby won the previous year, so $10,000. But I believe, if I remember going through the stats right, the last time Paul won, he won $5,500. So there's definitely some growth in there. Probably not what people are exactly wanting in the pay scale for FPO or MPO. But still, $10,000 is nothing to laugh at for 1 week's worth of work. And then we go over to FPO. FPO is its own world, its own excitement. And I was down in Peoria for the week doing some filming, and I followed the FPO chase card for round 4 and 5, and then I walked around with the MPO lead card on round 3. I didn't get there till round 3. And but I got to spend a lot of time with the FPO girls, and especially that chase card, but still watching where the lead card is at and what the third card was at. That was pretty exciting. But there's a lot of new faces, a lot of European faces. And so they're not necessarily new, but they're new to the stateside, new to, I think, the top competition. But Paige Pierce, your new 5-time FPO world champion, winning $5,000, winning by 5 strokes over Evelina Salonen. Evelina is from Finland. And at 19 years old, it's only her second time to the U.S. And to only lose by 5. Super awesome. She shredded the Northwoods course. On those courses alone, she shot a 1028 and a 1005. Her 2 rounds there bested everybody in the field. So if the tournament had just been at Northwoods and they did not play Sunset Hills, it very well could have been a different story of the results of what we have in the FPO division. The Sunset Hills, I think, catered a little bit more to someone like Paige. Evelina has a good arm, though, too. Evelina's not... she's got an arm. So I don't know that was a disadvantage, but she definitely was able to carve the lines better into more of a wooded style course. I followed from the Trilogy perspective. Kristen Tatar and Rebecca Cox were both on the cards. I'll actually, when I'm done with this, I'll work on some highlight videos that I created that I have for those 2 players to kind of see what the round 4s and 5 look like. If you haven't seen, and I'll put the link down below, there's a YouTube video that I've uploaded with the Kristen Tatar near ace, and that was super exciting. I mean, I don't think anybody saw it, and even when I was filming it, I don't think it looked like nearly the result that it ended up having. So she throws this nice straight shot. It has a little bit of a fade. Opto St. Pro hits a little bit on the high on the right side, kicks down, and then there's a steep hill that goes down to the water, and there's an OB line. Luckily, she was not out of bounds, but she still had to take it down. It was still a 35-foot putt uphill with about a 45-degree incline, and she smashes that putt. So super awesome. I was very excited to be there, excited to follow those 2. I'd never really got to see Kristen Tatar in person and play. And again, she can carve lines, very good player. And as always, I love following Rebecca. Rebecca struggled a little bit on putting, but she's typically a very good putter. But she still made up for it a lot on a lot of her shots. Still overall, except for her final round, shot above her rating every single round. And I did follow that last round, and she had a few putts that were definitely not Rebecca-like. Again, I've filmed her a couple times so far this year. She's typically a very good putter. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time I get to see all of them. All right, guys, so our disc of the day. So I said it in the last episode, one of the biggest reasons I think a lot of people know me is because of my collector history. And I love dynamic discs. I love Trilogy. But I collect dynamic discs, and I have a fairly large collection of dynamic discs. So every week when I do the podcast, I'm going to try to choose a disc just to talk about it a little bit, give you a little bit of story and background if I'm able to. And this week, we are looking at the Classic Hard First Run Truth. Not the EMAC Truth, the original Truth. The original Classic Truth came out in August 29th, 2013. That is the release. The first run and the stock stamps came out together. I don't remember the amount of first runs, but this is a black Classic Hard with a silver foil. One of the stories with the Truth is, and I've talked about some of this before, but just to kind of make sure that it's in on this episode, is when Dynamic Discs became a manufacturer in December 2012, and Eric McCabe came over. Prior to that, he was Discraft sponsored, and he threw the buzz a lot, and so he wanted a disc that was, I don't want to call it similar-ish, but he wanted something with the flight characteristics to stay very straight. And when they came out with the very first one that came out was way too overstable. And that's what we call the Verdict now. They didn't like the way that one flew. It is not what he wanted out of the Truth, per se. So it became the Verdict. They retooled it a little bit. They adjusted what they needed to get it to go extremely straight. And that's where we get the Truth that we have now. Well, over time, as that the mold wore out and it started having issues, it started becoming less stable than what the Truth was originally designed to be, which is why the EMAC Truth ultimately came out. So we have the original Truth, which is often now referred to as the Pre-Mac or the OG Truth, or it's just the Truth. There's an EMAC Truth and a Truth, but it's still a very true disc, a great beginner disc, a great disc for super straight. If you got a lot of power, it's great to get it to stand up and slightly turn over. If you have a slower arm, it's going to go straighter for you and still have that left fade for a right-handed player. So again, EMAC Truth. Totally blanked out what I was doing there, but EMAC Truth, August 29th, 2013 is the birth of this disc. Check it out. All right, guys. Well, that's just about wraps up. There's not a lot going on with me in the future. I think in the next 2 weeks is actually pretty slow for me. So I hope to get back on track on some of these videos and some of the podcasts that we have. Fix my lighting situation. I had to change it all up when I had some children that were here for the summer. But kind of get everything back on the wrap. I am going to the Tim Salimsky U.S. Masters at the beginning of September at Maple Hill. Pretty excited about that. We'll talk about that more next week when I have Kevin Gleason up on the video. I'm sure me and him will talk about that. But as always, we're going to do a giveaway to our Patreon supporters. And since I've been gone for a few weeks, we are going to do 2 Patreon giveaways. So if you want to be a part of these giveaways, every week I do a giveaway to one of the supporters of the Trilogy Talk through Patreon, patreon.com/Trilogy Talk. If you want in on that, it's as simple as $1 a day, goes a long ways to help support. And in return, I give some giveaways, and usually they come from sponsors or sometimes older stuff that I have, past tournaments, stuff like that. But yeah. So, all right. So this week, let's see. This week, we are giving away a Moonshine Raider. I still have Moonshine Raiders, so if you don't win this or you're not a Patreon and you're interested in it, send me a message. We'll get with you. But the Moonshine Raider, a double stamp Moonshine Raider. All right, let's go through. I use random.org. I know you can't see it, so you just kind of have to trust me. We currently have 8 people. And we click random.org, 1 through 8. Jim Bevins. Jim Bevins with the Moonshine Raider win. So that's giveaway number 1. Number 2, we're going to go with a hand-eye Moonshine Judge. Great disc. I use one of these off the tee. It's the hand-eye. So very popular. You see it's got the little gritty line stuff in there. All right, let's see who's getting this one. Again, 1 through 8, random.org. Max Garcia. Yeah, awesome, Max. I got to play with Max during GBO, get to know him a little bit, hang out. Love to see it when I get when supporters win stuff. I love giving things away. So again, if you want to be a part of that, please consider it. But even if you don't want to do a financial contribution, consider just sharing and liking not only the Facebook page but the YouTube page. We have an Instagram page. Just sharing those and getting likes brings in more people to the community, so we can talk more, we can get more things together. But my mantra on there is like, share, contribute. Really, that's what I want more than anything, is I want to have a conversation. Things that we talk about in the podcast or anything I do, if there's something you want to talk about that you like, you dislike, you want to see, or you're glad that you saw, comment below. Comment on Facebook, comment on Instagram. Just contribute and be a part of the community with what we're trying to do here. So, but until next time, keep sharing the Trilogy love with the world. See ya.